We are Anka. Stay tuned for updated real news.
Hello Anka Daily News viewers. The ongoing war between Ukraine and Russia is causing great tremors not only on the front line but also in the heart of society. The sound of cannons has now been replaced by the voice of the people. The latest information reveals once again how the war has shaken the social balances within Russia. As the economic crisis deepens due to the prolonged war, this crisis is directly reflected on the lives of ordinary citizens. At this very point, unexpected developments are taking place in Russia. People started to take to the streets against the cost of living in different parts of the country. Moreover, this is not limited to individual complaints. It is reported that local protests are taking place on a regional basis, and citizens are voicing their reactions more and more loudly. Even many of those who were in favor of the state at the beginning of the war are now complaining about the difficulty of access to basic necessities, insufficient salaries, and rising prices. The allegations are even more striking. The families of conscripts are also supporting these protests. This new wave of reactions may indicate deep cracks in the internal front that the Kremlin is trying to keep under control. But is the reaction of the Russian people really spreading? What role do the families of soldiers play in this process? Can such actions put pressure on the Russian government? Is the war's supporters unraveling as economic difficulties grow? Let's take a look at the developments together. By the way, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss our daily reports and explanations. Tell us in the comments what content you'd like to see on the Anka Daily News channel. And now let us begin if you're ready. Anka Daily News reports. With the war against Ukraine, Russia is having to cope not only on the battlefield but also with socio-economic turmoil at home. With the impact of economic sanctions, currency crisis, and the increasing cost of living, the people's patience has reached the breaking point. While the sharp increase in food and energy prices in particular has increased the unrest throughout the country, local protest movements in which civilians, especially the families of soldiers, participated for the first time have started to attract attention. A small-scale action that started last week in the city of Yaroslavl soon led to national discussions. A group of about 150 people gathered in front of Yaroslavl railway station and held a silent sit-in with banners reading, "Where are our sons? The war must end," and "You cannot live on pensions." The large number of families of soldiers in the group drew attention. Especially the mothers and wives of young soldiers sent to the front reacted to both the concealment of military losses and the lack of economic support for the families. Police teams arrived at the scene in a short time and warned the protesters to disperse. However, the protesters remained silent and continued to display their banners. The demonstration ended without police intervention, but the images quickly spread on social media. Just 2 days after the demonstration in Yaroslavl, a group of about 300 people gathered in the center of Moscow near Arbat Street. This time it was not only soldiers' families but also pensioners, university students and small business owners. Among the issues protested against were the increase in food prices by more than 35% in the last 2 months, the sharp rise in gas bills and inadequate wages. The protesters chanted, "The war keeps the rich alive, the people crawl. The most striking part of the event was the demonstrators sit-in with blankets on the ground and empty food containers. This symbolic demonstration dramatized the poverty in the country. Following the demonstrations in Moscow, a group of soldiers' families in Kazan gathered in front of the military commissariat building in the city square and demanded information about the fate of their children. The speech of Anna Petrova, who said, "I have not heard from my son for 3 months," caused the crowd in the square to experience emotional moments. The authorities' refusal to provide information increased the anger. A similar scene took place in Novosibirsk. People gathered near the military base, claiming that the government was hiding the deaths of soldiers from the public. Demonstrators chanted, "Enough! Our sons and daughters are wasted on war, not elections." Although the protests have not yet reached the level of a nationally organized resistance, they have attracted the attention of the Kremlin. While state-sponsored television channels gave no coverage to the protests, independent news outlets and social media outlets shared footage of the protests, reaching millions of people. State authorities are trying to suppress the protests, labeling them pro-Western provocations. However, the fact that military losses are no longer concealable and the economic difficulties have a direct impact on the daily lives of the people gives signs that the protests may spread. Due to the economic sanctions, inflation cannot be controlled in Russia. The increase in basic foodstuffs has pushed many families to the hunger limit. Especially in rural areas, state support has been cut, while small farm owners cannot find spare parts for agricultural machinery. This situation is seen as a harbinger of a food crisis in the coming months. Although investments in the defense industry have increased with the state's orientation towards war economy, this situation has created a deep gap in the civilian sector. Investments in areas such as education, health, and infrastructure have almost come to a standstill. In many regions, teachers' salaries have not been paid for months, while hospitals are unable to provide services due to lack of equipment. Surveys show that public opposition to the war is on the rise. This rate is particularly high among the young population and women. For now, it is uncertain whether this silent resistance initiated by the families of soldiers will turn into a nationwide social movement. However, it is a fact that the people are no longer silent. Although the protests are small, silent, and unorganized, they may mark an important breaking point for the Kremlin, because this time it is not only activists who are shouting in the streets. It is millions of ordinary people who have lost their children in the war, who are worried about the future of their children, who calculate the money in their pockets every morning when they go to the market. These silent revolts in Russia show that war can be lost not only at the front but also in the kitchen. The most basic cell of society, families and mothers, are now asking, for whom is this war being fought and for what? For the time being, the Kremlin seems to be turning a deaf ear to these questions, but increasing pressure and the risk of spreading protests may lead the government to take more radical steps in the near future. However, time will tell whether these steps will lead to surprising and anger of the suppressing. However, time will tell whether these steps will lead to suppressing the anger of the people or further fueling it. What do you think? Can these protests take on a more collective face? How do you interpret these actions? Let us know in the comments. We read and care about your points of view.